Long ago, long before the modern hum of cities and traffic, the world was connected by a route both fragile and mighty. It wasn't a road as we think of one now, paved with stone or lined with signs, but rather a vast and shifting network of paths, trails, and camel tracks that wound from the heart of China all the way to the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. It was called the Silk Road. The name itself evokes a sense of softness, of mystery, of elegance. But this ancient trade route was more than silk and more than road. It was an artery of exchange, of goods, ideas, beliefs, and people that stretched over 4,000 miles and linked the empires of East and West. Let us begin. In the Far East, in Chang'an, the glorious ancient capital of the Han Dynasty. Imagine yourself in the heart of Chang'an, in what is now modern-day Xi'an, China. The year is somewhere around 130 BCE, and the air is filled with the scent of incense, the rustle of brocade robes, and the gentle clinking of bronze coins. Markets buzz with life. Traders from nearby provinces crowd the streets. Artisans sell carved jade, lacquerware, and finely painted scrolls. The Han Dynasty, under the wise rule of Emperor Wu, is at its height. Emperor Wu is ambitious, not just for wealth but for knowledge, for diplomacy, for spreading the strength of China beyond its borders. He listens closely to his ministers, and one voice stands out, a man named Zhang Qian. Zhang Qian, a young official in the Han court, is chosen by the emperor for a bold mission. He is sent west, far beyond the Great Wall, to forge alliances with distant peoples, especially the Yuji, a nomadic tribe driven out by invaders. His journey is perilous. He is captured by the fierce Xiongnu nomads and held for over a decade. But Zhang Qian does not forget his mission. Eventually, he escapes and continues his journey. When he returns to China, he brings not only tales of the Yuji, but incredible stories of Bactria, Fergana, and other distant lands rich in horses, grapes, pomegranates, and glass. The emperor is intrigued. These distant places have treasures China desires, and likewise, Zhang Qian learns, Chinese silk is prized beyond imagination in the West. So begins the birth of the Silk Road. The early trade routes are treacherous. They snake through the Taklamakan Desert, a place whose name means, "Go in, and you won't come out." The wind there is dry, the nights cold, the sand fierce. Travelers face sandstorms, bandits, and long stretches with no water. And yet, still they travel. Caravans of Bactrian camels, strong, double-humped, and resilient, become the lifeline of trade. These beasts are well suited to carry silk bundles across the desert and over mountain passes. In exchange, they bring back horses, glassware, spices, and woolen cloth. Step by step, route by route, the Silk Road begins to take shape. Not one road, but many paths that weave and split across Central Asia. Satchel, the soft chanting of monks in candlelit caves, and the scent of cinnamon drifting through a desert breeze. You are still on the Silk Road. But tonight, the story is not just about trade. It is about the treasures of the mind and soul. As merchants, messengers, and monks moved along the dusty trails of the Silk Road, they carried more than fabrics and coins. They brought stories, prayers, paintings, philosophies, and slowly, softly, like the wind shaping dunes, these ideas mingled, changed, blossomed. This is the story of the Silk Road, not as a highway of goods, but as a corridor of cultures. Perhaps the most significant spiritual traveler along the Silk Road was not a man, nor a caravan, but an idea, a philosophy, a path of peace. That idea was Buddhism. From its roots in India, Buddhism spread gently across the mountains and deserts, riding with monks and pilgrims who sought to share their teachings with distant lands. The journey was long, but the teachings of compassion, mindfulness, and the search for inner peace found a home in new hearts. In Dunhuang, the Mogao Caves became sacred sanctuaries for Buddhist art. Imagine monks carving into the sandstone, painting vast murals with crushed minerals, lapis, gold, cinnabar, depicting stories of the Buddha's life and past lives, surrounded by celestial beings and swirling lotus blossoms. These were not just places to pray, they were beacons, shining lights for weary travelers seeking shelter, inspiration, and rest. In the mountain kingdoms of Central Asia, Buddhism took on new forms. In Khotan, it mingled with local deities. In Kucha, it gave rise to beautiful music, poetry, and scripture translations. And in China, it flourished. One of the great translators was Xuanzang, a Chinese monk who traveled to India in the 7th century, following the Silk Road in reverse. His journey took 17 years. He crossed towering mountain ranges, hostile deserts, and foreign courts, gathering sacred texts and deepening his understanding. When he returned to China, he translated over 600 sutras, shaping Chinese Buddhism for centuries. His life became legend, his devotion, a symbol of the Silk Road's spiritual heartbeat. As you walk the Silk Road in your imagination, look to the buildings, look to the scrolls and carvings. The styles change like seasons. In Samarkand, you might see Persian domes and intricate blue tilework. In Turpan, you'll find Buddhist cave temples nestled in the cliffs, with frescoes showing Indian, Chinese, and Hellenistic influences. In cities like Merv, Herat, and Bukhara, trade brought Persian miniatures, delicate, brightly painted scenes that told poetic stories of kings, lovers, and gardens in bloom. Art was not bound by walls. It traveled, stitched into tapestries, painted on pottery, etched into coins. It spoke in 1,000 tongues, yet always said the same thing. Beauty lives where cultures meet. Alongside spiritual ideas and art came the scripts of the Silk Road, writing systems from east and west that shaped how ideas were recorded and remembered. From India came Sanskrit, the sacred language of Buddhist texts. From Persia came Middle Persian, used in trade, government, and Zoroastrian scripture. From Arabia later would come Arabic, which carried Islamic philosophy, medicine, and science. And across China, classical Chinese was the thread that bound poets, philosophers, and scribes. But there was more. In places where cultures overlapped, hybrid scripts were born, like the Sogdian script, a beautiful, flowing writing used by merchants from Central Asia who acted as middlemen between empires. Their records, scribbled onto paper, birch bark, and wood, speak of spices, debts, friendships, and distant families. These languages lived not only in palaces, but in caravanserais, inns along the trade routes where travelers shared bread, laughter, and tales. Let us pause now and imagine the sounds of the Silk Road. Not the wind or the crunch of camel hooves, but the music. In the market squares of Bukhara, flutes and lutes are played beside drums and stringed instruments. In Kucha, musicians compose melodies that blend Indian raga with Chinese harmony. Silk Road music is a fusion, sometimes joyful, sometimes solemn, always alive. In China, musicians begin to incorporate foreign instruments, like the pipa, a kind of lute, which may have roots in Persia. Court music becomes more vibrant, worldly, rich in rhythm. Music, like silk, becomes a gift of movement and feeling. And even now, if you close your eyes, you might still hear a distant tune. Somewhere along those ancient roads, a song that drifted from one culture to another like perfume on the breeze. Along with silk and religion came knowledge. Arab and Persian scholars preserved and expanded upon the learning of the Greeks, Indians, and Chinese. Their studies in astronomy, mathematics, and medicine reached across the Silk Road, passing from scholar to scholar. In return, Chinese inventions flowed westward. One such invention was paper, originating in Han China and eventually making its way through Central Asia to the Islamic world, and from there to Europe. It transformed the way people recorded ideas. Another was the seismograph, used to detect earthquakes, and the compass, which would later guide ships across oceans. Medical texts were traded alongside herbs and minerals. In India and China, complex systems of diagnosis and healing were already well developed, based on balance, energy flow, and observation. Persian physicians blended this with Greek theories and brought it to new lands. Even maps, often inaccurate by modern standards, show how people envisioned their world. A Buddhist map from Dunhuang, for instance, places Mount Sumeru at the center, surrounded by continents and sacred rivers. It reflects not just geography but belief. Of course, silk remained the most precious treasure of all. Chinese silk was so fine, so luminous, that in the Roman Empire it was worth its weight in gold. Roman writers marveled at it, and sometimes complained that it made Roman men too soft and effeminate. But silk didn't travel alone. Along the way, weavers exchanged techniques, embroidery styles blended. Patterns evolved. From India came cotton, from Central Asia, wool and felt, from Persia, richly dyed fabrics. In Byzantium, silk production would eventually take root, thanks to monks who smuggled silkworm eggs in hollow canes. Across the world, people wore clothes stitched with stories. Threads from one land, dyes from another, symbols borrowed, changed, and worn anew. No journey along the Silk Road would be complete without tasting its offerings. Imagine the first time a Chinese noble tasted a Persian pomegranate, or a Central Asian trader discovered Indian cinnamon. The Silk Road was a banquet of flavors. From China came tea, eventually beloved in the Middle East and later Europe. From India came black pepper, cardamom, and sugar. Persia offered dates, nuts, and saffron-colored rice dishes. Central Asia shared naan, kebabs, and fermented kumis, a tangy drink made from mare's milk. Food was memory, celebration, and healing. Recipes traveled in the minds of cooks and were reborn in every kitchen along the way. Let us pause once more and look at the human side of this great exchange. For every caravan, every temple, every scroll, there were people. Imagine a Chinese silk trader falling in love with a Sogdian dancer in Samarkand. A Buddhist monk debating with a Nestorian Christian priest in a tea house in Khotan. A musician teaching his melody to a student from another land. These human connections, these friendships, loves, rivalries, and acts of kindness are the quiet treasures of the Silk Road. Some lasted a night, some a lifetime. And now, as the fire of our story dims and the stars above the desert brighten once more, take comfort in the truth of this tale. The Silk Road was never just about silk. It was about people reaching across distance, across language and belief, to share what they knew, and to learn what they did not. It was a road of the mind and of the heart. As you close your eyes tonight, let yourself journey once more across the sands and temples, markets and mountains. Let the hush of history cradle you. And sleep, knowing that long before the world was wired together, it was woven, gently, patiently, by voices, ideas, and hands across the Silk Road.